Today we have with us Nischal Narayanam. He is the founder of Nischal Smart Learning Solutions. He's one of the 7 brilliant brains in the world as per National Geographic. The first Indian to become world memory champion, India's youngest CA, youngest double postgraduate, and the list of his accomplishments goes on and on. Currently, he's putting his focus onto simplifying education and making learning fun for everyone using Nischal Smart Learning Solutions, which is used by over 2 lakh schools worldwide. Thank you so much for joining us, Nischal. It's a pleasure having you.
My pleasure, Deepak.
So, jumping right ahead into the conversation, you have achieved so much at such a young age, and yet you try to do more with it. What is it that goes behind striking such innovative ideas, and how are you making all of it happen at the same time?
So my journey started at a very young age, and I've been very passionate about mathematics since my childhood. That's what kept me going, and it was an accident. What happened? An accident incident. What I can say. What happened at my young age, and when I was just about 9 years old, I was with my dad and playing around with my father at home, and he brought home an account statement, and I happened to spot an error in the calculation statement. And my parents, both of them, have ignored that incident, and they went back to office the next day. But they later realized that really the statement had an error, and then they were quite surprised with my mathematical calculation abilities and my mental calculation abilities, and they decided to kind of get me trained in mathematics, and seeing my passion, seeing my curiosity in the subject, they kind of went on to appoint several teachers from around the world, and I was lucky enough to be trained by more than 42 mentors from around the world in mathematics, in Indian, Chinese, Russian, German, Scottish, Arabic, all these methodologies. And I was lucky enough to get that training and that mentoring at a young age that really kind of groomed my raw talent, what I can say, and God's gift. And I went on to perform a very rare feat in mathematics called Ganitavadhanam, which is also called as the ultimate test for one's concentration and focus. So Avadhanam means concentration for your focus, and Ganitam is mathematics in Sanskrit, as you know. So Ganitavadhanam is a test for one's focus and concentration in the field of mathematics. So I went on to perform this feat at the age of 9. I went on to author several books on school mathematics at the age of 10. And I also went on to design India's first ever mathematics laboratory when I was just 10 years old, for which I even got the President's Award from Abdul Kalam ji back then. I received the National Child Award from him. So the thing is, definitely the passion for the subject and passion towards education is what kept me going. All these achievements are my personal achievements or personal glory, what I can say, but today what I'm doing is kind of impacting and changing lives of thousand lakhs of kids. So this is what gives me more satisfaction, what I can say. And I've always believed that if a child gets the right education, a right platform, and an access to right resources at a young age, at the right age, definitely they can achieve whatever they want to achieve in life. And every kid is equally special, equally talented, and equally gifted. It's just that the right grooming and the right nurturing is what is very important, and that's the responsibility of every parent and every teacher around the world. And with this intention, with this purpose to create a platform for kids and access to educational resources, a good quality of educational content, and to give them a platform to excel in life in whatever career path they choose. With that purpose, I went on to establish my education company, Nischal Smart Learning Solutions, at the age of 15. And our vision and mission was to kind of transform the conventional education system and bring in a lot of revolution initiatives in the conventional teaching and learning pedagogical approaches, methodological approaches. And I'm very proud that in this last 10 years of our journey, we went on to build a lot of initiatives, a lot of innovative products, and globally collaborated with a lot of schools, educational boards, even including government sector schools. And we've achieved excellent penetration and excellent acceptability in the market. And it gives me immense pleasure to say that our education company is even technically accredited by our NCRT CBSE board, and we are the only education company in entire South India to achieve this accreditation. So that speaks of the quality of the academic standards what we are following and the content.
And now talking about your pursuit in education, like you mentioned, so you started your own firm around democratizing the education system and creating new pedagogies and curriculum of your own. So how are you creating a different set of interventions in the space, which are not the ones that have already something that people have seen or students have been through? So how does it differentiate from what is out there?
So Deepak, if you observe the trend or the change in education sector in the last say couple of decades, if you see the thing is the medium of communication is transforming, but the core content what you're transmitting or the core teaching methodology what you're following has always been the same. To give you an example, books are being converted into ebooks. Real classes or live classroom lectures are being transformed into online classes and into MOOCs, like massive open online courses. But the thing is, the content which is being communicated, the methodology which is being followed has really not undergone a transformative change in many decades, if you observe.
Exactly.
So what my philosophy was to establish behind establishing the organization, and what my purpose was, is that to transform this content, transform the way you teach, transform the way you learn, the teaching methodology and the learning methodology. So when I was a kid, when I was just about 10 years old, when I was in my class 5th standard, when I was in my math class in my school, I had a very, very kind of a life-changing incident, what I can say, which inspired me to start this education company when I was 15. So the thing is, when I was in my math class, I was being taught mensuration chapter by my math teacher. And as you know, mensuration deals with three-dimensional geometry. And she was trying to draw all these three-dimensional figures on a blackboard, like cubes and cuboids, all the prisms and pyramids, and trying to explain what is surface area, what is volume, and trying to differentiate what is a two-dimensional figure from a three-dimensional figure.
Exactly.
So my friends kind of struggled to represent the 3D shape on a 2D shaped paper or a notebook, right? And they were kind of struggling to understand the difference between what is a square and what is a cube, and what is the rectangle and what is a cuboid. So when I kind of observed this in the class, I came back home and asked my mom, do we have any models? Do we have any tools for mathematics? Do we have any equipment for mathematics? And then she kind of took me around the market and we explored, but we realized that for mathematics, except a geometry box, there was no other instrument available in the market back then. So this was 2005. Right. And I was quite amazed, quite surprised, seeing that there are laboratories for sciences, physics, chemistry, biology. We have a computer lab in school. We have like even language labs coming up. Why not a math lab? And that's what inspired me to design a math lab, design equipment, models, tools, which could inculcate a philosophy of activity-based learning, experimental learning, even for mathematics. I went on to design more than 5,000 varieties of instruments and tools, and a lot of content, a lot of books and other supplementary information to enhance the implementation of the product. And we also designed teacher training workshops and a lot of guides and user manuals on how well we can implement the math lab in a school. What is strongly established, and also what is strongly feel one of the differentiator in our organization's vision is that the way we design the content is that, see, we don't want the kids to be just learners. We want them to be seekers. So we are trying to teach them how to question. So we're not just trying to impart information in a one-way mechanism, like a monotonous style, but we're trying to make them question, trying to make them think beyond the textbook. So how we start a class is that we start a class with a question. Say, for example, our physics faculty would come around and would start a class by asking questions, saying, hi kids, have any of you have ever observed a black color aircraft in your life? Then the kids start thinking, what is he even asking?
Yeah.
Start thinking that, yes, I've traveled in a plane, I've been seeing planes all my life. Why are all the planes white in color? Why not even single plane is black in color? I start thinking curiously. When the car I travel, it can be in red, blue, or black, or whatever color it might be. Why not a plane? I start thinking curiously, and then they are inclined towards even listening to the class, because today holding attention span of a child is the most challenging aspect. The attention span is very, very short. So only when they're curious to know, they start focusing on what is being conveyed. Coming to other aspects, as I mentioned, let's say like behind designing a math lab or behind designing our science labs like physics, chemistry, biology, if you observe, all these labs are portable by nature and also micro scale by nature. So what we've always believed in that is the classroom atmosphere should always be enriching, engaging, interactive, and enlightening. We are converting every classroom into a laboratory, and we are reversing the standard practice of taking a child to a lab, but instead bringing the lab itself into the classroom. And the thing is, by converting the class into a laboratory, we are inculcating experimental learning, activity-based learning, a hands-on philosophy every day for every topic, every chapter what you learn, and it becomes a standard element in a 40-minute session in the classroom. One more kind of element or one more observation what came across is that although hands-on learning, activity-based is equally important, along with this, there has to be a technology integration. There has to be a 21st century skill set what we need to build for a child. As we know, like children, the three common learning styles in kids are auditory, visual, and kinesthetic. So auditory is by listening, visual is by seeing, and kinesthetic is hands-on learning. So activity-based learning. So the thing is, most of these solutions, digital solutions of e-learning apps or online classes are focusing on audio and visual, auditory and visual. There's nothing which can actually replicate a kinesthetic learning approach on a technology platform. So that's when what we've done is we've, again, as I mentioned, we've consulted experts, academicians, child psychologists, and we've brainstormed for 3 to 4 years, and we went on to build the world's first ever e-learning platform that can create a lab atmosphere, a virtual laboratory on your mobile phone.
Nice.
And that's when we kind of used technologies like augmented reality, virtual reality, artificial intelligence, and embedded those technologies into our platform. Just to give you a small idea, the latest publications what we launched from our organization, the latest textbooks what we launched for math and science for all the grades, say from class 1 to class 10, what we launched are all powered by AR, augmented reality. Just imagine you opening up a textbook of, say, physics or chemistry or biology, and just scan any image from the textbook and experience and trigger 3D interactive digital content on your platform, and just imagine you're experiencing experiments, you're doing virtual activities, you're watching videos, you're interacting with the content. So it's something, a very, very immersive learning experience.
And as great as this sounds, but another issue that comes up with scaling this sort of interventions is, like you mentioned, that one part of it is like a physical setup where this portable concept of micro scale, cost effective labs is something that you're trying to implement into those schools that you've partnered with. Another aspect that you're adding it to is the technology, the AI, the machine learning concepts of it. But how do you manage, I would say, the funding aspect of it when it comes to bringing the cost down to a level where it can be scalable to multiple schools? So like you mentioned in your answer before, that there are a lot of schools who do not even have basic infrastructure. So what about those sort of schools, and how do you bring a cost structure that would fit that sort of a school for that sort of a student, segment that is not even able to buy, say, a book? So how would they afford a portable lab or a small scale AI machine learning implemented device for that matter?
Sure. See, first of all, the core ideology or the purpose of our organization has been to serve the education system, to kind of strengthen the education system and reach out to every kid out there and make some contribution to their life, to their learning path, and respecting this core ideology and core philosophy of the organization, definitely we've been able to cut down on the cost of development with our vendors, with our developers, and we have been working with like-minded people, obviously, and with limited resources, we were able to build all these initiatives. And most importantly, when we reach out to the student, when we reach out to a school, because we're working with Service Motto, our pricing, our financial business model has been a very, very affordable, very reasonable or acceptable model, which could be scaled to much bigger volumes. Because I personally believe that when we achieve big volumes, the cost would definitely come down, and not just the capex, but also in terms of the OPEX, operational expenditure, the running cost, the overheads, and the kind of manpower, everything. So it's all simple economies of scale. When you scale up the volume, the cost comes down proportionately. So what I've always focused on is that although in the initial stage, which we've already come across, or we kind of crossed that stage, but still in the initial phases, say a couple of years back, when we launched this AR platform or the technology platform, when the volumes were very low, obviously we had to bear and absorb that cost of running the platform for a limited number of users. But now when we're going to thousands and lakhs of kids, definitely we're able to kind of absorb that cost and also go and recover our capex also. And at the same time, coming from a customer point of view, if you talk about our pricing or business model, you'll be definitely shocked and you'll be kind of thrilled, and you'll be thinking, how is it even feasible? How is it even financially viable to sustain this product at such a price? So to give you a small example, say a traditional laboratory set up in a school, it would cost nothing less than 10 to 15 lakh rupees per subject, and you would require at least a 500 square feet of space in a room, and you would require multiple rooms for multiple subjects. Like say physics lab would be in one room, chemistry would be in another room, and biology lab and math lab and stuff, right? So you would need nothing less than 2 to 3,000 square feet and at least 40 to 50 lakh rupees of investment. Whereas our portable labs would cost just 1 lakh rupees per subject, which is 1/10 or 1/15 of the cost compared to the current investment. They're academically much more innovative, operationally much more convenient to use, and financially much more feasible. At the same time, they would save that 2 or 2,500 square feet of space, because our portable labs, although they have 5,000 equipment with them, they could be just stored in just 9 square feet of space. That is equal to 4 tiles in your room or in your whatever space you talk about. Just 4 tiles. Just 9 square feet is the space what is required. So the thing is, operationally, financially, academically, when we are able to give better results, definitely the acceptability is much higher. And actually, talking about this cost, see, so many schools are not having the labs in the first instance because of this cost, because of the high investment. So if you are pricing the product at that equally high price, then you would be facing the same issues in terms of affordability and acceptability. So our intention was to reach the grassroots level, give an international quality product at affordable price.
So now coming to the end of the conversation. So like you mentioned that you've done intensive research into the whole diaspora of education, and then you've met and, had brainstormed with the brightest of minds across the country and even globally. So what are some of the shifts in education domain that you're seeing, and how do you see that affecting us at home in India? And to the second part of the question, how would you say that shift has changed post-COVID, and what do you see as coming out of it? Like, what are the future interventions that could come out of this situation?
So broadly, if I want to kind of divide this into 2 aspects, one is the general shifts or the general changes in the trend, if you have to, that is one aspect. And second is the current crisis, what we're experiencing, what this crisis has taught us, and what impact and changes it's gonna have on our lifestyle in the long run. So there are 2 aspects here. The first aspect is that definitely, see, if you observe the current generation of the kids, the learning styles have truly transformed from the time how our parents used to learn, how we used to learn, or how the kids are learning now. And the access to information, access to technology is very, very wide, very vast. And we are experiencing a never before growth in the technology penetration. And this is a boon and a bane. So if this opportunity is rightly used, it's a boon or it's a bane. So the thing is, in general, because now the information is available to all, the access technology is available to all, definitely we got to adopt more technology-based platforms and more of online platforms, because self-learning and online learning are the only alternative options what the kids have right now. And also in the general trend, if you observe, in terms of the parent psychology, educator psychology, student psychology, if you observe, see, if you observe right now the parents' age group, for example, say parents who might be between 30 or 40 years of age, who are having school-going kids, right? Like who have been born in like early 80s or late 70s, right? That is the kind of age group we're talking to right now. So they have seen both sides of the world. They've seen the pre-technology era and now the current, both are experiencing right now. So the thing is, one strong change what we are observing is that earlier a parent's intention or an objective was to give utmost importance, utmost priority only for academic knowledge for a child. But now every parent is giving priority, utmost importance to holistic development of a child. And at the same time, coming to now the COVID situation, the crisis what it experiences right now, as I mentioned, online learning, self-learning are the only alternatives, and we all are forced to adopt to technology-based platforms, forced to migrate to technology-based platforms, and this change was to happen sooner or later. And we should definitely treat this crisis as an opportunity to transform ourselves.
So thanks for summing it up so wonderfully, Nischal. It's been a pleasure having you. Thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure. Thank you so much. Yeah.